everybody. This is Amy Fountain, and I'm here with Connie Regalado, and this is our very first, it's the launch of the Autism Book Club. We are really excited. The energy's been building for this, and today we're going to go over chapters 1 and 2, and also some of the introduction pages that came before that, because those are just rich with information and inspiration as well. Really quick, for anybody who hasn't watched the introduction video, the book Autism is with the subtitle, A Hidden Key to Our Spiritual Magnificence. It's an incredible book co-authored by a mother and daughter team, and also 3 other non-verbal autistics. And currently, Lyrica, the daughter, she is a nonverbal autistic, and she's 39 years old. So you will hear, I know in my reflections, referring to where they are now, as well as I have a passion for, this specific key to humanity's spiritual magnificence. There is something profound about what autism has to share with humanity's ascension, evolution, and these nonverbal individuals have a very profound message that's really coming through loud and clear in this time in history. So I'm so excited to share this book with all of you that are watching. And please, if you are able to join us live right now and you're able to answer or ask questions or make comments, I welcome you to do that throughout the process, because we want your participation. And also, at any given time, if you haven't already joined the Autism Experience Facebook group, it's our closed group that's specific to autism. And at any time, please, interject in there and start a conversation with each other. And, Connie and I will keep our eyes on that as well, so we can keep the conversation going. Over time, it's just going to get more and more in depth as it is. So without further ado, let's dive into the book. Connie, did you have anything you wanted to kind of kick us off with, as far as starting out with the introduction, the title, the grid, any of those things that are inspiring to you that really you want to highlight?
Well, hello. First of all, I want to say hi to everyone who is joining us today and who will be viewing this later on. Thank you. You're in for a treat. Actually, last night, Daniel asked me kindly if I can read a certain section from the book. And what he selected, I was like, wow, okay, I can see why you would want that to be read. So I would like to do that. And this section is called What If? And it's towards the beginning of the book, after the preface. And it says, what if suddenly the world could see another view, a vision that autism is a higher form of being, not lower, that we in autism are blessed with spiritual abilities and possibilities that help us transcend the lower world trappings to find our own truth, purpose, and way? What if, from our enlightenment, we can become teachers and leaders for our parents and others? Don't we already give to those we love endless opportunities to master unconditional love? What if there is truly a language of light that does not require words to be spoken? Who better to receive and transmit these holy thought forms than those of us who are uniquely wired for spiritual communications? What if we have all chosen to come here in this compromised vehicle to assist with the earth and humanity's ascension process at the proper time, place, and way? What if we have the capacity to channel divine energy messages and meanings to a world trapped in darkness? It's beautiful.
It is so beautiful. I love that. I'm gonna have to do what I can to keep it together through this whole process, because it touches me.
Yes, and it really, that little section kind of sums, it lets you know, it's like a foreshadowing of the treat that this experience of a book is. It's going to take you in, and you go into this with a different mindset, even if you're the parent or caretaker. You go in with a different mindset. It doesn't matter who you are. You go in with a different mindset when you read this book. And that right there is just beautiful. And I of course thank Daniel for bringing that to my attention and wanting me to read it, because I could see why he wanted that to be read, just because of the profound messages in it. Just that little section, and that's not the entire thing. That's just a little part of it.
Yeah. Yes. So can you share from your experience in having, we can probably touch on this right now because it's going to be this underlying current throughout this process, who Daniel is and who you are to Daniel, and what his relationship to Lyrica is at this time today.
Wow. I am Daniel's mother, and like I said before, I had a typical mom and son relationship. Being a parent who has received that diagnosis of autism, and so you go into maybe reading books, going to support programs. Just to me, that doom of it, but final acceptance, of course, it comes. But also with Daniel, just like I mentioned before, last year is when things changed for all of us, as far as learning that Daniel has the ability to bilocate, meaning being in more than one place at one time, mind talking, telepathy, speaking on the board, saying things that I did not know that was even in him to say. This book came at the perfect time, in all of that, when all that was happening. And it really sums up a lot of the things that we were experiencing with Daniel.
Very cool. Very cool. And as we know, and we will explain more later, Lyrica and Daniel are very close, and being even, they speak, of course, telepathically and communicate with another young woman, Adri, and that's a beautiful thing what they have going on. So it's really cool because, everything that you touched on just in that what if piece, as I was reading through the first couple chapters again, it was like I was brought to tears because so much of that what if is happening like right now. And it's amazing. It's incredible because to really see that these kind of things that were considered crazy or woo-woo, you can't see it, all of these things that really were kind of stifled and pushed down because of fear, and Lyrica touches on that in some of the information that she writes at the end of chapter 2. And I could see that her as an individual growing up throughout this story, which I love this part of it because the courage, the faith, the perseverance that Gayle and Jose, her father, portrayed and continued on from a very, at a time like, Lyrica, surprisingly, synchronistically, we're not very far apart in age. Even in birthdays. And so for me, it's kind of this parallel thing to watch happening, because it's like, well, I was going about living my life of development and she was going about hers. And it just is a real telling of the state of the consciousness of humanity and how much we have changed in just under 40 years, and even if you think or notice how much any of us individually have changed, and especially for those of you who are watching this and participating in this, I'm sure that all of you have had some profound shifts in the last just 5 years of your life. And so to me, it just is a showing and a real telling that it's tremendous, the amount of change that can happen even in the next 40 years. Can you imagine? We are really in the time of the new earth. It's almost like the new age was the new age, but the new earth is the new earth. And it's unfolding before us. So yeah, it's super exciting, and so many things. It ignites so much in me. And when you were talking, Connie, about Daniel and your experience, it was just like I was just vibrations were just waving through me.
Yeah, yes, Amy. You know, and one of the things is um, there's so much that has happened that I can't keep up with it. And I'm speaking of just generally with Daniel within the last year, where I can't deny that something's happening, that we are in the new earth. I can't, you know, there comes a point where you're in such denial that someone has to shake you and say, don't you see what's going on around you? Don't you see the telekinesis? Yes, that he's doing. Don't you? You can't shrug that off and just make it something that it's not. I mean, the book doesn't speak of telekinesis, but it doesn't need to, because once you read it and you see the gifts, why are we limiting what else they can do, or they're capable of? And with Daniel, going to Daniel and Lyrica's relationship, you know, that one was interesting. I still remember the first conversation or first meeting that they had. And what Lyrica said was Daniel loved her so much that it was so profound that it could not be held in this world. And this is not a physical face-to-face meeting that they had when they first met. This was let's call it etheric meeting. You know, Gayle's in Arizona, I'm in Texas, you know, and when I emailed her to let her know about the book, that's when they first communicated, and that's Daniel and Lyrica. So who else can say that they can do that? You know, that's pretty, to me, a girl who's very logical, who what she sees is what she gets, and to experience something like that and know that it's not false. You know, I may not know the mechanics or everything about it, but I know that it's happening. And I know that we are part of something so big and beautiful. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean that's even a telling in itself. With I'm just what's coming to mind is that adage when one or more come together in my name, and two or more. It's like, and this touching on this thing about love, you know, it's like love is so much bigger than any of us can ever understand. We have such a very small understanding of love. And as I, you know, read through these chapters, it it reminded me of how small human beings are about love. Even Lyrica touches on that. Um, Now, of course, I have all my highlights and my notes here, but oh, here it's like it's on page 28. It's in chapter 2, and she says, "When I was little, love on me felt like ploy to my little person. I not understand love. I felt like tipping boat. I heard the words, but they upset my balance." And that translates to me when she says, "Love felt like a ploy to my little person." When she refers to herself as the little person, I see that as her describing, you know, the small self that one is, the identity perhaps. And that was how she saw herself, because that's how the world saw her. You know, I saw her evolution in just a little bit of this, from, you know, who she is today. She was this brilliant, she's an autistic mystic, you know, and there's not to be mistaken that she still has this human experience. So that doesn't mean that she's this, you know, beyond evolution person that we, you know, we're all evolving together. And so she has her trials and tribulations throughout this. And that's what this part of the book really does show. It shows that, you know, she had growth and development that she had to do. And there's a lot of things that she doesn't know. And one of those things was, here she was developing and growing in a world that maybe didn't fully understand love, didn't know how to love, and judged. And she even talks a lot about that, how, you know, when she would look in people's eyes, and how all those sensitivities would, you know, she was receiving through her sensory system an immense amount of information, you know, data and data. And that's why these individuals have such a difficult time looking anybody in the eyes. And I started thinking about that too, Connie. You know, it's kind of like, how many times do we not like to look in each other's eyes for very long? What if we're picking up on things that we sense the discomfort and we have the ability to just look away, you know? And what was it pushed on us? The ploy, this is the ploy part, you know, for us to fit in with society, to do things in the normal way, the specific way that somebody out there, you know, maybe humanity collectively decided that this is the correct way to do things. And yet it's created from a place of fear, and all of the hurt and the pain that we've gone through. So really, really interesting. Not to jump forward in all of this, but it was just naturally going there. And I just want to comment really quick. We do have a comment or a question from, I'm so sorry if I butcher your name, I apologize, Ali Saruli. And unfortunately, I can't read it because it's in this beautiful other language. So if there's a way that you have an ability, Ali, to translate what you're saying and then retype it, that would be really awesome. I know Google Translate has some things in there, and unfortunately in the Q&A, it's not giving me that option. So please do re-comment if you can in English. I would so appreciate it. So sorry, I don't speak your beautiful language. Okay, so let's kind of get back to like, let's try to get it in somewhat of a linear fashion. Here I go doing the normal way. But just starting one in the early years in chapter 1, on page 2, there was a part where they talk about when they found out about the diagnosis, or at least they found out that something was going on with Lyrica. And there were things like, you know, labels, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, deafness. They were just, as she says, coldly stamped into the thick, fast-growing medical records bearing her name. And the thing that I thought was really amazing from the very beginning of this journey for them was how there was a doctor who said to her, let's see.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about
here?
There
was one doctor that said institutionalized, which that's been suggested for Daniel, which was ironic. And then another doctor that said, hey, you know, there's something deep within her eyes and she's not going to learn like typical learning. There's going to be a different way that you're going to have to approach her with education. I mean, it's not verbatim what I'm saying, but it's like, that's basically what he said.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I appreciated that, because even in that tender age that she was, I feel like she played a role in that, where he looked into her eyes and he received from her the depth of what was really going on. And it's kind of like when you talked about when you found the autism book, it's like you were sitting there and you just suddenly got this thought, maybe I should Google these two things. You know, and so being that he said what he said, I felt like there was definitely a part played in there. Divine intervention. I don't care if it was like a, you know, who knows, maybe it was an angel whispering in his ear, whatever it was. But I thought that that was really amazing that, let's see, later I understand the wisdom that he imparted to me in that clear perception of Lyrica's reflection, that he had the eyes to see and the courage to share. Huge, especially at that time, at a time where that was the given prognosis, wasn't it? Especially if it was that severe, institutionalized.
Yeah, especially back in those days. I mean, not trying to say that, you know, because I'm around Lyrica's age as well. I'm not trying to say I'm old or anything, but back in those days, yeah. I mean, you know, and like I mentioned before, they said that about Daniel too, like, oh, institutionalized. Oh, you could probably have more kids. They even had me go see a geneticist, you know, just like Gayle. And, you know, I want to say the chapter 1, you'll really appreciate chapter 1 because it gets into the family dynamics of it. You know, the diagnosis, the other children, the grandparents, you know, what else? She even mentions, you know, hey, the other kids did not have enough a lot of mom time because it had to be focused on Lyrica. And I know a lot of individuals out there, they go through that same thing where, you know, maybe one of the children, whether they be disabled, autistic, or have severe health condition, there's a focus more on them to where the other, and even though your husband or spouse, they may be neglected, and it's not a neglect out of, I don't love you. It's just that focus is being put somewhere else. So I loved how she included that in chapter 1. It was really good. So chapter 1 is a family dynamic, and it's beautiful. It's perfect because it sets the tone. It's like it's building you up to the rest of the chapters.
Yes. Yeah, it really does tell. How old is Daniel again?
20.
20.
He'll be 21 this year.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot changed in, what is that, like 9? I'm terrible at math. 19? How many years is that, the difference between the two of them?
Oh my goodness, like 19?
19 years, right? Yeah, because she's almost 40. Okay. So yeah, I mean, incredible. See, and that's another example of how little changed at such a long period of time for a really long time in human history. I mean, it's no wonder why people think that, the history books of what we know is all there is, because we're so kind of stuck in that old paradigm. But anyway, yeah, that I love how you explained that. That was beautiful. I really enjoyed this part of it, because who doesn't like a good story? And especially with this one, when you're reading it, you can really tap into the happy ending.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say something. When I was checking the book out again, I was just going through it, and I read this section. It's in part 1, and it's a tribute to Margie, who is Gayle's mother. And as I was reading that tribute, I started to break down. It was so beautiful. And I was reading it out loud to Daniel, because he likes me to read this book out loud to him. And I when I was breaking down, I tried to compose myself so I could finish reading. And you know what he did, which is, this is something else that has come out in him ever since we start reading this book and we're becoming aware of what, his gifts, is he sat up in his bed and he put his hand on me to console me. Never in his existence has he ever consoled anyone. Okay. And when he did that, I was like, holy crap. Are you consoling me? So that was beautiful in itself. Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, I won't be surprised if once this book gets out to other parents or caretakers, children with autism, once it's read, that they see different behaviors in their child. I'm going to put that out there, because I saw it in Daniel, and I continue to see it in him.
Yeah, and those are the eyes of love right there. That's the thing that I can see has pulled through this story to become a reality into a book, for everyone to come together, is that enduring love that really is unconditional. There are no conditions on this. And even though, we've talked about this, Connie, we experience as parents, as mothers especially, when our children have challenges, and, we go through those challenges with them. But I think at the end of the day, you can't help but just melt back into that love. It's in us. It connects us. That actually brings me to a part where Gayle, what a beautiful poet she is, huh?
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love that story that about Margie. I mean, that to me was just another facet of this amazing ability that we have to tap into spirit, and that we are spirit, to really reconnect with that world that is very much a part of us that we've dismissed for so long. But she touched into this part where she was talking about watching Lyrica sleep. And, my son has had his own special needs and stuff. And it's like when he's up and going and awake, it is on, it's just go, go, go. And I remember when he was really young, like 2, 3, that toddler age, when he would go to sleep, it was like all of my angst and all of my expectations upon him and whatever frustrations I was going through as a parent, it was something that I resonated with when I read those words, because it was like, wow, it's like they're sleeping and they're so peaceful, and it's like everything's kind of closed down and quiet for that moment, or for a long moment, and it just brings that serenity within yourself. So I can totally relate. I mean, these new children are paired with the autistic kids in any other label that you want to call it, because you could just about label any of them something. They've all got some kind of symptom that's on that list of symptomology that comes with these perceived disorders these days. But really, it's this specialness to wake us up, to help us to really see that there's so much more to life than what we're doing here. It's not about achievements. It's not about grades or success or money. It's about love. I mean, that's just how I see it.
You're right. It is about love. And, I mentioned this before. One of Daniel's first messages to me was, you must love everyone as you love me. Unconditional. Everyone and everything. No one is above the other. So yes, it is. I'm very thankful for this gift of love and understanding and exploring, because I'm at a point now where I am always exploring. I don't look at things as this, that's what it is. I'm always trying to find out what, like, Daniel wanted me to read, what if you know so and another thing I wanted to say about chapter 1 that I loved was, she's speaking of her father, her mother, who crossed over, and Grandma Ruth, Lyrica's paternal grandmother. I had to ask Daniel, do you see spirit as well? And of course, to that, he says all the time. So, that was very interesting. I just loved the chapter 1 of the book.
Yes, I love how that actually does. It just bleeds the lines between, what we understand or think of as other world. It's another dimension. It's really not another world, and it's something that we all have access to. It really highlights a lot of the things that in history has been, I mean, gosh, people were murdered for that, right? They were burned at the stake for their spiritual gifts. So it's no wonder a lot of us now, if anyone believes in reincarnation, that, we are a little hesitant about some of these things. But the more and more you can hear about these stories, I think it just kind of reiterates that it's real and it's happening, and it's something that can't be ignored. I really appreciated all the stories that she mentioned, even when she talked about the farmhouse and some of the stuck spirits. That's really fascinating to me. I think that there's so much richness to this life that we have yet to explore because we've been afraid to explore it. I had a personal experience a while ago where I had really wanted to connect with my angels. I knew that that was something that was possible at that point in my life. I had kind of breaking through all the barriers that I had put up kind of naturally as a child, because it was really not accepted by those around me growing up. It just wasn't a part of life. Anything that unseen, actually, I was told, was of the devil. I was very steeped in specific religion, and something about that religion, even though it was Christian based, didn't recognize angels, didn't recognize the saints. It wasn't something that existed. God was this being, this man actually outside of you, and you had to profess your sinning. So it was interesting that when this time finally came for me, I was actually laden with these recurring dreams where I was running from a ghost and I was protecting my child from it, and I couldn't move. And then I went to an angel workshop where you connect with your angels, and I realized something was connected with those dreams. And so I faced the next ghost that was in my dream, and I embraced it, and it turned into a little girl. And and it was all good after that. Like I didn't have those dreams anymore, and it was like that barrier that was put up between what I knew naturally, what I came into this world with, was back on. You know, it was something that I could access again. So yeah, like it's a fascinating thing to me. I think if we can actually be curious and want to learn more about these things, you know, why were these spirits that were trapped looking for their lost children? You know, why did they do the things that they did? You know, this repetitive motion, and I mean that's really classic when it comes to, you know, ghosts. But it's a fascinating world that we have yet to really. It's a lot of kind of answers from people that supposedly know, but I think that there's so much more to know.
Well, usually what they do is they dismiss it as, you know, I hate to say the word cuckoo. Someone's being cuckoo if they see that, or, you know, you're not supposed to talk about that. And I have noticed that there are way more things that we're not supposed to talk about than normal. You know what I mean? You know, and I'm finding this out. And I know I am not crazy, and I know what I see, and nobody can take that away from me. And I'm telling you, it is, like Daniel says, a program to keep us asleep. I'm not gonna get that deep into it, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's a program. And so, you know, I will keep on learning and to keep on exploring. And it's interesting that you brought up the farmhouse, because I'm telling you, I was thinking about that farmhouse before you brought it up, because I remember reading it going, wow, this is like a little scary movie. Like, you know, the ghosts that they always are roaming around the same, they do the same thing, you know, and she didn't seem like she was scared of it. She just said it was disturbing, you know, and I agree with that. It is pretty disturbing. And I did ask Daniel, has he had any disturbing ghost experience? And he said not really, but he has had, you know, he it's interesting to speak to Daniel, because he's like, I see him all the time, so what? But with me, I'm such a scary person. I'm like, you know, because how I was raised, you know, bless my parents' heart, they did the best, but you know, I was raised in the Christian household. Anything that was different that ain't nothing but the devil. You know, that's what they say. It's nothing but the devil. Everything is the devil. So I became like, well, I don't want to talk about that, or it doesn't exist. If I don't see it, it don't exist, or it's evil. And now I think it's interesting that I'm in a position in my life where I can't say that anymore. I can't say it's the devil, because if I say it's the devil, then I'm saying my son's the devil. Can't do that. You know what I mean? So this is really interesting. I'm just I'm very excited to be here. I can't stress that, to do this book club, because like I said before, after I read this book, I was like, no one's talking about this book? What's going on? Somebody's got to be talking about this book. It's like the book doesn't exist or something, you know, like I know that, you know, I need to see more traffic on this book. So it's very, I can't stress enough. It's very good. And chapter 2 gets into school days, which those are always fun. And, you know, one of the things that I loved about chapter 2 is how she listed everything that Lyrica, that she's worked with Lyrica on, or Lyrica has gone through during her education. And I relate to that. I know a lot of caretakers and parents will too, because there is a lot of things that you will go through and experience with them just to, for education. You know, just even the woes that she went through, you know, having to fight the school systems, you know, all that, you can relate to all of that.
Oh, I absolutely can. I don't know what your journey has been with Daniel in school, but I put my, you know, I grew up, my mother is a preschool teacher. And so, you know, she's not real, like, you have to put your kid in preschool. Actually, now after being in, you know, in that field for so many years, she feels that if you don't have to, that really 3 is the earliest age that she would suggest putting your child in preschool, or in any sort of facility like that. But I chose to stay home with my son. And when he became 3, when he turned 3, I kind of naturally thought, okay, he just needs to go to preschool. And so I put him in preschool. And I found out all the reasons. Actually, before that, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of was doing what the status quo does. And I realized there was a lot of things that I didn't want. But I had to have that experience to do that. And so, you know, eventually now he's 8 and we're homeschooling, and now we're looking to actually integrate a little bit of school with this really fabulous alternative school. A lot of people around here call it the farm school, because kids get to just be outside. They've got chickens, they've got, you know, a couple of other little furry pets that are there, and they do gardening, and they just spend a tremendous amount of time outside. And the work is very organic and child-based. So whatever it is that they're learning is just based on the children's curiosity and, you know, what they do. And so that to me was ideally what I wanted for him. And I was really glad that I found that little sort of a gem to be able to integrate that eventually, because, you know, all of us need a little bit of space from each other too. You know, there has to be balance that's found within that. And so we've been homeschooling for the last couple years, and it's been great. You know, it's been a ride, the whole thing. And I love to see that at least, you know, Gayle was like, when these things aren't working for me, no matter what it was, even when it was, I was fascinated by this, the therapies that actually helped Lyrica. When she was about 3.5, they had those rigorous therapies where she was, you know, crawling for a mile and doing all of these different things and breathing through the NASA mask. And, you know, there was these therapies that helped her tremendously. But when they became a strain and when they stopped kind of serving, that's when they knew it was time to end that chapter. And so I really love to watch that flow, because oftentimes I think a lot of us will stay in doing something because we just think that's what you're supposed to do, you know. And the list of all of the different things that she had as kind of solutions once she received diagnosis, and I wanted to touch on that. I believe that was in chapter 2, because she was about, was she 8, I believe?
I think she was 6 when she was diagnosed.
6.
It says 6.5. That's when she was formally diagnosed as autistic. And I love how Gayle wrote, what an epiphany to finally find out that we were not alone, that there were many others who were living in a shared drama.
Absolutely. I love that too. I love that too. I actually recently kind of did a little self-diagnosis for my son, because it came recommended by a friend who actually has autism, and she was diagnosed as an adult. And I knew something was quirky about him, but I never really wanted to give him that label. I didn't want to go down that road. I didn't want a medical person telling me to medicate him and, you know, all the things that come with that protocol. But I followed just kind of a little self-diagnosis, nothing super major. And it was really actually what I had thought it was. But I realized too, the value in kind of knowing that, because moving forward from that place, you have more of an ability to say, okay, something about it. Like I've always said, use the label as a stepping stone. You know, don't use it as a hindrance in a box to keep yourself in and keep your child in. But at least it can help give you answers and offer insight into solutions that can help, because it's not the traditional way. We just don't parent and caretake for these individuals the same way. Humanity in itself is evolving. And so we have to recognize that, you know, it's as simple as the child saying, you know, that they see somebody that's not there. You know, it's simple to negate that gift, which is actually a gift. It's an ability that, if not infused with fear, can be utilized as that gift. So as simple as saying, you know, oh no, honey, no one's there. You know, if you don't see him, he doesn't exist. A child in its innocence is going to say, okay, mommy, and completely shut that gift off. I'm sure that's what a lot of us did. And so there are a lot of things that even my son sees and says, and he said he sees energies and he sees ghosts and that sort of thing. And I trust him, you know. It's like, what's the point in negating any of that in the first place, you know?
Exactly. I was just listening to what you said here.
But I wanted to touch really quick on something that's really important and kind of close in my world. It's on page 7. It actually goes into where she starts talking about her grandfather's passing, or when he had a stroke, and then he had a subsequent passing after that. She says, this is Lyrica. Oh wait, was it Lyrica? Okay, no, this was Gayle speaking, and then she speaks on Lyrica's behalf. I surmise that perhaps her seizures, and she started to have seizures, so I surmise that perhaps her seizures and his struggle to hold on to life were somehow related. According to Lyrica, my instincts were correct. After we'd been together several days, Lyrica was able to finally deeply connect to her heart and share her grandfather's story. She talked about that kind of roundabout in that area. She said she watched him struggle and her body struggled with him. I experienced seizures that were very difficult to endure. So it's really fascinating to me, this whole thing about seizures, because my youngest has seizures. He has febrile seizures. And when it comes again to kind of the allopathic Western medical sort of way of doing things, there's really very little known about it. You know, they want to help you keep the body temperature down. Febrile seizures are caused by heat, you know, by fever. But it's really fascinating to be able to connect with Lyrica and understand a little more of her experiencing these things, because it really is an energetic download. And there are environmental repercussions that come with it. You know, I'm learning so much about that. And so I appreciated so much what Gayle said here, because there is something profound about an individual's instincts, but, you know, they often call it mother's intuition, right? And so we know things sometimes that we don't always give credit to because we're not used to that. We're not used to kind of checking in. So I really appreciated that she said that, and that I was able to relate to that in this way, shape, and form, because when I first read this book, I don't even think I had my son. So I didn't know what it was like to even visit the world of seizures, except kind of through very few people that I had experience with. That was just another piece. Is there another piece that you want to highlight, Connie, that stuck out to you?
Not from chapter 1. Well, you know, that's like I could talk about chapter 1 all day, actually. You give me a chance. I'm trying to limit myself here. No, not that. Well, actually, I do want to say something about the grandfather. I loved how Lyrica was. I got the feeling like he was coming to her, like, is it okay? What's going to happen now? You know, and I love that because he came to her almost like he knew that she was the one to go to, and she could possibly help him to cross over. But ultimately, what you find is that she's like, hey, I don't know. Hey, I'm gonna let the angels take over, you know. And she says, you know, the truth is I wanted to help my grandpa, but was so afraid I might not be able to come back from his death experience. And I saw the angels who told me that afterwards I would cancel our connection and we would each go our own way. So that was a beautiful. I love that part, you know, when he came to her, and it kind of goes back to what you said, like they do have still, I mean, you can't look at them like, oh, they're autistics or they're mystics and they just know everything about that other side and things that we don't know. No, they still have a human element. So.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we all have this individuation, you know, this identity that we're all souls, the way I understand it, and we're all evolving, and we're here in these bodies as part of that evolution, to have experience in this physical density, which offers something that non-physicality doesn't. And so I appreciate that through so many times. You know, she has sometimes much of the time, some of the most profound things that come through. But at the same time, it's not to put her up on the pedestal, and she would absolutely tell you that. She would say, no, you are you are the leaders as well, you know, and that's what I feel like the biggest messages from them is, we're here for the evolution, but we're here to remind you who you are. You know, it's not like we're just these better beings, you know, we are all equally incredible and magnificent. And to that sacrifice, I feel I'd love for you to touch on that as living with Daniel, you know, somebody who I don't know how many people believe this, but the more children I come across and have babies myself, I really recognize that the soul does even help co-create the body that they're in. You know, they choose the path. There is a lot of free will once you get here. That's kind of determines a lot of things, but I feel like there is a determined path. And one of those paths, one of those choices has to do with the body that you come into. And if the body that you come into is one that you cannot fully integrate into, that's how I've understood autism just from my awesomeism practice. You know, they're only able to integrate, you know, their essence into the physical body to a certain point, maybe a chakra, depending on which chakra is, depends on what skills they actually have as far as their ability to speak, and so forth. Because the lower chakras are, let's just say they're muddied up and broken, and we're all connected to each other that way collectively. And so the beautiful thing is they can come and be here and now be heard in these amazing ways, you know, through facilitated communication and RPM and just typing on iPads. Anyone who's nonverbal can do that now because there are so many faculties that allows that. So yeah, if you could touch on just what that is like in everyday life to live with someone who's actually chosen this, I feel, as a sacrifice to the collective. You know, it's a gift to us because they're experiencing a life in a way that we haven't chosen. We haven't chosen that path. And I believe we all make our different sacrifices. So can you touch on that and what that's been like? And be really honest, you know?
Well, what I can say is that I know that there has been discussion about immunizations and autism. And, you know, there was a whistleblower that recently came out. And of course, me, you know, I brought up to Daniel, hey, you know, is that why you're autistic? He goes, it doesn't matter. He said, it doesn't matter. I would have been autistic anyway, like something like that, you know, to that point. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So he told me that he chose his how he is and his what he called his team of caretakers that he chose for to come in and to have this experience, and for us, like you said, to find ourselves as well. He is a great teacher to me. Like, for instance, you know, he does have healing gifts, and he showed me just not last night but the night before last, he helped me realize you have healing gifts as well, mom. You know, and how I did it was I intuitively put my hands over my husband because he was ailing, and I don't know, it was like I was being guided. And the next day when he woke up, he was okay. And Daniel said, see, you have the healing gifts too. And so it's just little things like that. You know, Daniel's a little Riddler. Sometimes he doesn't come right out to tell you a lesson. He'll say it to someone else, but it's really for you. For example, he said to my coworker, you know, you need to pay attention to all the signs and all the synchronicities because there's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything means something. Just little lessons like that. And I just figured out that, oh, wait, that's for me. You know, I'm getting a lot of synchronicities. I used to ignore them and think they were just coincidences. And now I use those in my life on a daily basis as learning tools. You know, Daniel is a great teacher. you know. So that's how it is being with him. That's just a little bit of what he does.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, and I want to highlight a little bit about what you touched on, because there is a piece to this in my fascination with autism and the connections with some of the people that I've made over time. There's a beautiful woman who has this amazing body of work called Thrive with Autism. And it really is all about the physical, because, there's different facets to all of this. And very much truth in that whistleblower that came out, because isn't the pharmaceutical industry something that is not really based in integrity? They are creating these vaccines without, what is the intention behind them? Let's see, what's the energy behind them, let alone the physical ingredients, So there's a lot moving behind that, I don't vaccinate myself at this point. I don't even remember the last time I had a vaccination, and my oldest son is the only one who has been vaccinated till he was 3. And I even kind of was like, I wonder if that exasperated some of his symptoms. And that's just how I see it. These bodies are very sensitive. That's why they have a difficulty embodying. They can't detoxify like a lot of our bodies. A lot of the rest of us who can handle all of these crazy toxins that are in our environment and in our bodies now. And the thing that I loved about you sharing what he taught you is that this is something I've seen very significantly and consistent, is that in any given family, whether it's autism, whether it's, a celiac disease, whether it's, a sensitivity to a certain type of food, or whatever it is. It can be energy, it can be all the way down to physical. In my life, it was emotional. It was emotional toxicity. My child pointed out in his own ways to show me that I'm empathic. This is something I didn't recognize, and I didn't understand what it really meant. Because for years I was dealing with his empathy and his ability to process energy and emotions for other people that neither he nor I understood. And so what I'm saying about this consistency is that individuals come into their lives, these children come into their parents' lives and their teachers' lives and whoever it is that they touch, to show them whatever it is they need to learn. That it's like, hey, where have we gone wrong as a humanity? It is about the earth. That's why I loved in these chapters how every time Lyrica's symptoms would lessen was when she was in nature. And us getting back to that, nature's not just trees. Nature isn't just grass and fields. Nature is all around us, and we are a part of nature. And that's a big message that, I see shining through again and again, that we need to get back to what is natural and what we can work with, which is the energies, the in nature intelligences that are there. And I think that's really cool, the way that you were being guided, like you say, because it isn't about, oh, I'm Connie and I'm a healer. It's, wow, I have these abilities and I'm really curious and I'm willing to tap into them and just see what's possible. So that's really cool. You're on mute, Connie. There we go.
Can you hear me now? Good. So it's interesting you brought up nature, because within the last year on this journey, I have, and I'm a hermit, okay? I'm a hermit. But I have taken the time now to appreciate nature. And I love it. Even if it's hot outside, I love nature. I love to look at the trees and the clouds. And, now it's a wonder. It's like I'm a child now. And I love that feeling of looking at the world with child eyes now. Thank you to my son for doing that for me. And I never thought I would say that, but because he's almost 21 years old, but he had this ability to have me honor nature now. So thanks for bringing that up.
Would you say that you think that has never lost that child essence?
I agree. He is, and as a matter of fact, my husband gets on me all the time. I still call him the baby or a kid because it's very difficult for me to see him as an adult. I know he's an adult, but he's just so childlike that I will call him a kid. So.
Well, if you think about it, we load up our words with meanings and negativity sometimes. And so as an adult, to call someone a childish is not really necessarily a compliment. But I gotta say that, the more that I embrace that, I think if we could be, that isn't that from the Bible or something? Isn't there a quote? Be like
A
little
child
children.
shall them or from the mouth of babes.
Oh yes. And so many times such amazing wisdom comes through them. And who says that it has to be an adult thing? To me, it's like all the things that come with adult. I want to be a child with the adult abilities, like to make my own decisions and to, be able to take care of myself. But at the same time, like I want it to be okay for me to have that childlike just way of being, because to me, what it does is it reminds me to stay in curiosity, and that's something I've learned so much on this spiritual journey, to be curious. Because if we don't stay in that curiosity and stay in the wonder and ask the questions, then we don't continue to grow. It's like if we do, we're always growing, I suppose, but it's not as fast as we would probably want it to be. It can happen at a really lovely rate without it, making us seize like it does my son. He just downloads so fast because he wants to be here. But it's just, I feel like it's this dance with the energy. And the more that we can understand what it is that, Daniel and Lyrica and all of these individuals that can tap into that, and even the little children that are these wise sages that have these things. My son used to say things that were parallel to my experience. And I'd be like, what did you say? And he would just repeat it. And then he'd go about riding his bike and singing a song to himself. It's really amazing. It's so fun. I want to touch on this a little bit. I don't want to go too far over time. I know everybody has things that they have to do. But I really want to touch on this part, and I'm going to see if I can get through it without getting over emotional, because to me, this is like a pivotal thing that I feel that really skyrockets this book into us recognizing, wow, there is something really big coming through here. And it's in chapter 2, and it was when Lyrica was 8, page 16, and she talks about, let's see, at age 8, a miracle far greater in significance than her first steps was Lyrica's breakthrough in communication. We'd been using word cards at home to encourage Lyrica to make food and activity choices throughout her day. Feeling a bit overwhelmed by the expanding library of word cards, I suddenly wondered if Lyrica could read. Could she perhaps also spell out words on a keyboard? I took her to my computer and asked her if she wanted to speak by typing. And I can just see this. She grabbed my index finger and guided it to hit the keys. The stupendous, life-changing event I celebrated in this remembrance. And she typed YES, and I'm not even going to read the poem that Gayle wrote, because it's beautiful and it's going to send me into tears and I won't be able to speak, called The Gift of Words. So I encourage all of you to read that again if you haven't read it yet. But the most amazing thing that came through was her first sentence ever that she spoke, and it was, "I am not retarded, I am intelligent." So at the end of the poem, she says, "As together we reached up to celebrate the gift of words, and for the first time each other." And right before that, she said this first sentence that crashed through her barrier of silence. I mean, it something about this facilitated communication thing is really incredible to me. It's so fascinating. And as I was reading this, I realized that Lyrica was I was like, wow, was she one of the first people that actually maybe created or tapped into this ability? And then Gayle went in to elaborate that there was somebody who wrote a book about it. And he said that Lyrica and one other person that he had met were the first two people that he'd ever met that actually taught themselves this. And so that makes you curious. It's like, huh, you taught yourself this modality of something that like didn't exist. It existed somewhere, didn't it? That they tapped into that. And I have known that as she talked about, she was very adamant about the facilitator that she used. I really want to find that spot. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Daniel and facilitated communication?
Yes, I'd love to. Actually, after I read this book, that's when I first started wondering, I wonder if, I mean, I know he could do all this stuff, be in more than one place at one time, and, you know, he's so magnificent. I wonder if he can actually talk on a board. So what I did, I actually Googled facilitated communication. I really didn't find a lot of information, and I was trying to find a board for him, and I ended up purchasing a steno board, like one of those boards that it looks like you could trace the alphabet. And I said, okay, this is the best I could do. So I got it in the mail, and I started trying to talk with him on it, and he did a little bit. And I remember just being excited with the yes and no questions, because it was kind of an awkward board, so I could see why he really didn't want to type on it. But just to see him select yes or no to certain questions was amazing. And when I finally got a board, that the one that Lyrica actually uses, he actually types quicker on that one. He actually loves that board. And I remember just being so excited that all this information is in you, and it was like a new toy for me. I would ask all these questions, and I was getting to know my son, this individual who I knew him, but I didn't know him. You know, I'm getting to know. I love that aspect of getting to know my son again, or not again, because but a new aspect of my son. A new aspect of my son. And you know what? He wasn't taught. It's just something that he does. So it has me wondering how many others who are nonverbal out there, if you put a board in front of them, how many will type?
Right. Yeah, and this is perfect, because she says here, I yell, I must choose my own facilitator. I must hear into facilitator's heart, listening for thinking that I am intelligent, into person who understands me, needs to hear my ideas. I think facilitator's job is mostly to help me learn to be my own person. And there's something really huge in that message, because, how many times do we not grow beyond the unlimited potential that we have, because all of our environment says to us, you have this much potential. There's a limitation to the potential. And imagine for, Lyrica at that time, it's like people see her physical experience, and that's what they're judging her upon. And granted, beautifully, you can see through just these two chapters how many people really came forth and were coming from the heart and were willing to be open, even if they didn't know. They were willing to experience something that was new, and that's really cool. I think it's amazing that for you to have that whole new experience. It is, I guess, I see that, like what you're saying, how it felt like you were getting to know your child maybe for the first time, in a way that you had never known him. I could see how that would be so exciting. What a breakthrough after all those years to just have that gift, and have that be, it's amazing what communication does, and it doesn't have to be in words, but that's how we've learned to communicate at this point in time. And I love what Gayle says when she pointed out in one of the last interviews that she did, how wonderful of a world would we live in when we can all just communicate telepathically. It really would cut out a lot of the drama and a lot of the stuff that we kind of put, as I call them, formalities, which are pleasant and nice, but not always necessary, I feel like. So just to touch up and wrap up on this learning thing, I absolutely I appreciate all of the stuff that Gayle did. I mean, I feel like she was a pioneer in really making changes, not just for Lyrica, but, you know, making changes in all different areas, touching the lives of all the people that she interacted with, going through a court battle and all kinds of different things just to advocate for her child. And it's a real telling of what love can do, especially when it's ignited with power, and that fierce mama bear that she became that very first night, you know, and she was told to institutionalize. So is there anything else that you want to share as we wrap this up?
Yes. I love how she wrote here in chapter 2 on page 17 that the teachers were trying to fix our flat tire they saw, but the tire was not really flat. It was a different kind of tire that no one understood. And this is what she wrote about. You know, she's talking about the public school and mind talking, aka telepathy, with the other students in the classroom. And when I read that section, I could not help but to wonder how many times has Daniel mind talked in his classroom with the other students. And I'm not just talking about autistic, because I'm not going to just say the autistic ones are the only ones that with telepathy. You know, I believe a lot more have telepathy than what we would say. But I did wonder how many. And, you know, there was actually a situation when we were in Sedona last time where Adri has a book herself. It's called A Child of Eternity, a very good book. And she used facilitated communication. And she was there in the living room, and Daniel was on his little favorite hangout by the table area. And they both started just snickering away. And I was wondering, what are you guys snickering about? It was just a little cute little laugh. And a little later, and I'm going to tell you something, back up real quick, I'm sorry. I kind of sensed that they were kind of joking about us, the adults and the parents in the house. They were like, oh, we got them like wrapped around a little finger. Look at them. We got them doing anything we want. And what's funny is I didn't tell anyone that I thought that's what they were laughing at. And then Jose was there, and he says, I said, yeah, they were in here just giggling before. He goes, they're probably thinking how, we're wrapped around their little finger and we do anything they want. And I said, okay, I have this rule. If more than one person says it, if you were thinking it and you didn't tell anybody that and someone else verbally said it, that's what it was. So I just thought it was funny how they were, you could clearly see that they're mind talking or using telepathy.
Yeah, and then you and Jose clearly were using telepathy too.
Yeah, they were just saying, I know what they were talking about. But I know they do that all the time. I know it. I mean, I know what Daniel's telepathy, his is, I get a feeling. Like I said before, I don't really trust my telepathy with him yet. That's just something I have to work on myself. But I get a feeling. And I'll ask him, okay, is this a message for me? Yes. Did you send it to me? Yes. And I use the telepathy. We have a telepathy check-in for the New Earth Academy that I love to use now with him.
Awesome. Well, so you're just honing your skills, and the more you practice it, then I feel one day it's just going to replace all that doubt. I mean, I know in my own practice of telepathy, that is the biggest hurdle, is that self-doubt that we've, call it a program, whatever it is, we've manifested that and practiced that really well for a long time. So now it's time to just practice the other things and to learn what it is to trust ourselves. And that was, Gayle, I feel ever since I've known her, has been somebody who has this undying faith. I mean, this faith that is inspiring and something that I'm like, I need some of that faith. And I can see by reading the story, I can see how it was built upon. It's not something that just happened overnight. And it happened over, a lifetime, a younger part of the lifetime of her daughter's experience and another part of her lifetime. I feel like we live more than one lifetime in a life. Yeah, so beautiful, beautiful. I think that's a really good place for us to wrap it up. And I encourage all of you who are watching this, watching the recording, please, please interject in the autism experience Facebook group. I encourage lots of conversation to go on there because a lot of hindsight can really bring inspiration and words. And any of you who are interested, I'm not sure if you can see it here. I'm going to re-show it. It's not the chat. It's not the screen share. Forgive me here. I'm just learning on this Google Hangout thing. Showcase. There should be over here showcased their website, which is, and I will put all this information in the comments down below in the description of this video on my YouTube channel as well. It's www.awetizm.com. You can sign up for their newsletter there and also find out a little bit more about the New Earth Academy. I know, Connie, you are getting ready to get those kiddos back together starting tomorrow. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, you're going to Sedona to all meet, the three of them, Adri, Daniel, and Lyrica, and just tell us what's going on currently with the New Earth Academy. I think that's just something that people might be interested in knowing about, and I realize it's just like this, an organic, unfolding, kind of unknown experience, hence why we need to be in that space of trust. So just tell us a little bit about that in closing, if you could.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good. Well, we are going to Sedona tomorrow, and basically the New Earth Academy, it is still forming, and we will, once we get there, right now it's just so much happening with it that what we did notice is that when Adri, Daniel, and Lyrica get together, there is a lot of magic that happens with them. Now, there are other light chargers. With these three, we're trying to get the New Earth Academy into form right now. That's the best way I can say it. Yeah. I don't want to do any, injustice by saying what I think it's going to be. But what I can tell you is it is a humanitarian effort. That's what I can tell you. It's as big as, it's not just for autistics. It's for humanity, what the New Earth Academy is.
Yes, yes. I know that it's definitely in the works, as anything like this does take time. I will post actually the link to that part of the website and share essentially what the main tagline of the message is of what the New Earth Academy is, for any of those of you that are interested in understanding a little more and even helping support that, if that's something you feel in your heart called to do. So any of you that have any comments, questions, and please do share this if you're inspired by this. And join us for our next show. We are going to broadcast chapters 3 and 4 on June 30th. It'll be the same time. That is a Tuesday. So 10 a.m. Pacific time. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for watching and being with us today. Thank you, Connie. So appreciate you and all of your input.
Thank you.
Bye.